Joyride, 1957, a novel of intrigue by J.P. Wasman on chapter 143. About 4 a.m., James began to stir. He was dreaming about some beautiful woman. She was rubbing his back and kissing his neck. His dream began to escalate. Soon he was dreaming he was kissing her. His passion was soon ignited, and the dream ended in sweet exhaustion. He fell back into a deeper sleep, and before he knew it, the daylight was pouring into his room through the open curtained window. Something about his bed seemed a little odd as he rubbed sleep from his eyes. He reached over and washed down the last few sips of a now very warm Coca-Cola. James stared around the room and didn't see anything unusual. Still, something seemed a little strange. He called out, "Anyone here?" There was no answer. James sniffed the air but noticed nothing unusual. James had been plagued all his life with hay fever. His nose was always running, and consequently his sense of smell was not the best. Finally, desperate to pee, he got up and walked into the bathroom. Soon he felt much better and crawled back into bed. He stared out the window at the bay and the little prison in the distance called Alcatraz. He had learned the story of Robert Stroud, the birdman of Alcatraz, and had always wanted to meet him. James liked birds and fed them whenever he lived in one place. He never got to meet Stroud, but he had read his book, Stroud's Digest, on the diseases of birds. He spent the better part of another hour staring and thinking. His gaze eventually went to his bag and a slip of newspaper sticking out from it. He reached across his bed, got a hold of his bag, and pulled on the newspaper. It tore away, as it was caught in the closed zipper. The piece of the paper he tore away contained a column about the assassination of mob boss Albert Anastasia in a barber shop in Manhattan. James read it twice, then stared out the window again. He wondered if maybe the mob or a killer like Robert Stroud might be after him and what he was doing. He began racking his brain to think of who else could be on his trail. He surmised the mob likely was on his trail, but wasn't sure who fired at him in the Rhode Island Capitol building. Also, he knew some of his close calls were not by a human hand. Could God or the devil be after him as well? If it was God, he surmised that he would already be dead. But it could be the devil. He stared up at the ceiling, visualizing old Job, the prophet of the Old Testament, who went through much more than he had been going through. However, Job's book did not indicate Job had some agenda, such as hunting treasure. Job was just a rich man who enjoyed the good life. James was just a man, not rich, who did have an agenda. He was a man who wanted to become rich. He was a treasure hunter. However, his treasure was a little unique. He did not want to find treasure to become rich. He wanted to acquire information. Information no one on earth had in this year, 1957.